All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the stream. It is a Tuesday. We have had some crazy action with Bitcoin over the last few days. We got the FOMC tomorrow and exciting things happening. And of course, as always, talking about wise lending. We have some interesting chatter on Twitter today by the founder of Aave. So if you guys aren't familiar with this account, the founder of Aave, Mark Billy Zeller, he's talking about Aave here, and I really love this tweet because this boils down what Aave is at its very core. If you scroll down to the bottom here, you can see we don't aim to offer the highest yields. We aim and succeed at providing the best risk-adjusted yields in the industry. So this is something that's really going to be important to understand because I actually disagree with this statement. And I wrote a response to it as well because wise lending and everything wise lending stands for is actually at odds with a statement of Aave. So Aave is not the best risk-adjusted yields in crypto, and I'm going to explain why on this stream. So first of all, this may have been true in 2019 because there was some big differences in 2019. In 2019, there wasn't really good yield sources like there are now. Now we have got staked ETH. You didn't have staked ETH in 2019. For 2018 when Aave started. You didn't have a lot of yield-bearing stable coins that like the good ones, not algorithmic ones like Luna or something like that. We have those now. We didn't have restaked Ethereum. We didn't have eigenlayer stuff. We do have that stuff now. So Aave's whole premise is built on the premise of we are the safest protocol and we're the most trusted protocol. And this is true, actually. This is true. And that's the reason why Aave has like more than 5 times more total value locked than the next biggest protocol. So it's true that they are perceived as the safest protocol, but they're not the safest protocol. And they are missing a huge opportunity by not making their yield better for the people that deposit and lend on their platform. And so let's go through these points right here. So first of all, first point, Aave's contracts are not immutable. They can be upgraded by Aave devs, unlike Uniswap contracts, Pendle LPs contracts, and Wise Lending, which are immutable contracts. So Uniswap is true DeFi. Pendle's LP, positions, their contracts that have the LPs in it, those are immutable. That's true DeFi. Wise Lending's contracts, they're all immutable contracts, which means that they cannot be upgraded. Our devs cannot change the contracts, just like the Uniswap devs cannot change the Uniswap contracts. We would have to redeploy if we wanted to change something about the contracts. This is not the case with Aave. Aave has upgradable contracts, and so they can actually be upgraded, in a split second, which can be used to completely rug things. By the way, now there might be checks and balances in place. There might be a time lock in place, which some people use. There might be governance in place that some people use. And that mitigates some of the risk, but not all of the risk. And, just as a standard, contracts that are proxy upgradable contracts, they're just simply not as safe. There's more attack vectors there than immutable contracts, which cannot be upgraded. So Aave isn't at the highest level of DeFi like a Uniswap, for instance. Number 2, Aave has suffered exploits and bad debt situations, but most don't know this because Aave has quickly resolved bad debt with treasury funds. It's good to have insurance funds, but it's better to have in-house live protection that could have spotted and protected from these issues. So Aave has had issues. Like not all of them were exploits where like an attacker stole funds. Some of them were not like code exploits, but it was just arbitrage because Aave had listed assets that were maybe not the deepest liquidity, maybe not the best asset, and the price crashed so fast that it created bad debts. So we'll circle back to that in a minute, but to think that Aave is the safest protocol, it's really not. First of all, they're not immutable contracts, and second of all, they've had multiple issues. Now, it's safer than other protocols because of the fact that it does have a very large treasury. So if it did receive, some type of exploit, as long as everything on the protocol was not completely wiped out, then they do have, tens of millions of dollars in a treasury to be able to make people whole again. However, if they did, have some type of protocol wipeouts, there's nothing that could stop that, and they don't have anything to protect against that. And also, I'm not sure, but I don't believe they actually have hypernative live protection like we do, like Pendle does, and like many other protocols do. Because if they were using hypernative or competitor to hypernative properly, then that would have been able to stop some of the issues they've had with creating bad debt on the protocol. So that's why I don't believe they're using it. Maybe they're using it now, but still, that doesn't make them better than anybody else. That just means that that they've achieved parity with everybody else. Number 3. Yield sources have improved significantly. Options like Lido staked ETH and yield farming stablecoins, yield earning stablecoins, have the same low risk profile as Aave. It is incorrect to think that Aave is safer than most Pendle finance assets, and this is why Pendle has accumulated $7 billion in TVL. So this is an important point here, because this really highlights where Aave has decided not to evolve. They're using the same strategy that they had in 2018 when they began. They've not upgraded their protocol to introduce better yield sources and offer better yield. Meanwhile, the DeFi space has evolved, and there's really good, really safe yield sources available. So Lido staked ETH, for instance, and Pendle pools that have good assets in them, like the ones that we use on Wise Lending, these are really good yield sources. They're the same risk profile as an Aave. And for a lender on Wise Lending, you are at the exact same risk level as Aave. Plus, there's an additional checks and balances we have on top of that because we have live scanning protection with hypernative. So what Aave and what the founder of Aave is trying to say is that use Aave, just use Aave. You're going to get less APY, but he wants you to be happy with that. He wants you to be happy with getting less APY because he's telling you you're making a trade-off for safety. Yes, you're getting way less APY with Aave. However, the trade-off is it's the safest one. They said he said it's the best risk-adjusted yield. This is simply not true anymore, like it was, in 2019. There's better yield sources, so you shouldn't take that trade-off. There's no reason you should be happy with earning half the APY that you could be earning, or 1/5 of the APY that you could be earning, when you're taking the same level of risk on Wise Lending that you are with Aave. Going further, so Wise protects lenders' deposits with Chainlink oracles. Aave protects lenders' deposits with Chainlink oracles. So it's the same level of safety as long as all the assets that are listed are, comparable. So as long as there isn't any weird assets being listed on Wise, then it is either the same level of safety or safer than an Aave. Wise only allows blue chip crypto assets with deep liquidity to be used as collateral. You can go to our protocol right now and you can see that we only have these assets available. If you go to Ethereum, we've got one more, which is wrapped Bitcoin. So you've got all these plus wrapped Bitcoin. Aave actually has more. So Aave and Aave actually used to have a lot more. So they've got Link. We don't have Link. We have not listed Link. They have their own token, Aave. They also used to have a lot more, and they actually have. So do you see this orange triangle? This orange triangle is because they've put in this isolated box right here. This is because of a response to money being lost on their protocol. So there was bad debt being created on Aave because they had too many risky collaterals listed as being able to deposit and then borrow against, and there was bad debt situations created. So they ended up delisting some things that they had listed before, and then they put more stringent parameters on some of these on some of these assets. So this is less safe than Wise Lending, because Wise Lending only uses the blue chips. We're not gonna list some of these other ones that Aave has listed and has had problems with. So that's an area where it's kind of not true anymore. Like, it's absolutely not true anymore to say that Aave is the best risk adjusted. Like, they're not even the safest protocol. They don't even have the highest level of safety. What they have is the highest visibility. They have the strongest brand name, but they are not the safest. Like, from every single aspect, they're not the most decentralized. They don't have the highest level of security. That even Wise Lending and Pendle has these higher levels of security. They do have a big treasury, sure, so they can pay out a lot in insurance if something does go wrong. But if their entire protocol gets wiped, or even if like more than 50 million on their protocol gets stolen, then they're going to run into problems because their treasury is only that big. And then the in-house live scanning protection we already talked about. Now, all that is not to say that Aave is bad. Aave is not bad. Aave is great. In fact, Aave is so great that Wise actually uses Aave to earn APY on the money that is not already borrowed up natively. So you can see we've got 86% utilization rate globally, and you can see individually with the pools. 89% of our Ethereum pool is borrowed up natively. 79% of our USD pool is borrowed up natively, etc. Which, by the way, this is way more, like a way higher utilization than Aave. Aave only has a utilization rate of about 40%. It's got over half of the funds are not actually being borrowed up. And you can see that that's on if you go to DeFi Llama and check the borrowed amount versus the TVL. But this extra, 14% currently that is not being borrowed up in our power farms, that gets sent over to Aave. So you can see this little Aave badge on each of our pools. So when you deposit into our pools, it automatically gets converted into those Aave pools until it is borrowed natively, either right here or in our power farms, where it gets pulled off of Aave and then converted into these power farms on Pendle. So we've got like Aave is great. Not saying Aave is bad. We build on top of Aave. We build on top of Pendle as well. But to say that, to think and to say that Aave is the best risk-adjusted yield, no, absolutely not. And I think it's interesting that Marcus say, where does he say? He says that just a couple more percent, right? Where does he say it? Where does he say it? Okay. Use Aave. Some lore about Use Aave. Don't want to risk their capital for an extra couple percent of yield. So I just showed you how you're not actually risking your capital anymore by using Wise Lending, and you're actually taking on less risk with Wise than you are with Aave in several different areas. So that part, that part of the statement isn't true. And then an extra couple of percents. Let's actually look at that extra couple percent, because If we go over to Aave, we can see what's the APY on USDC, 2.6% APY. On Ethereum, it's less than 2%, 1.9%. On DAI, it's 3.24%, and then USDT, it's 4%. So their highest yield is on Tether at 4%, and USDC is sitting at 2.6. ETH is less than 2%. You go over to our protocol, you can see that we're at over 6% on Ethereum. So that's more than 3 times more. That's not just a couple percent more. And the thing is, they're only offering a couple percent. So if it's a couple percent more, then it's going to be double. See USDC over double. We're at 7%. USDT, we're at 7.38% compared to 4. This is almost 50% more APY. And then on DAI, we're at 6.59%. And this is actually lower than it has been in the past 30 days. So in the past 30 days, we were seeing over 10%. And, it's always a variable rate. And then when we were at 10% and higher, we were as high as 18% just a month or two ago. Aave was still only at about 6% on their stablecoins and still only at 2% on their Ethereum. So it's very cool that Aave has been able to get, $20 billion total value locked on their protocol. That's a good thing. We want more people coming into DeFi. We also don't necessarily want to, take away from what Aave has done. We want to bring, capital into DeFi too, but it's also important to be honest about what's going on here because it's just not true anymore that Aave is the best risk adjusted yield. Yeah, back in DeFi summer, 2020, when all the yield sources were really bad and they all were very kind of like scammy yield sources that were only going to be good for a few months, and then they kind of 1,000% APY on day one. A month later, they're negative APY and people are losing money. Yeah, compared to that, sure, but we've got way better yield sources now, and it's just not true to think that that Aave is safer. So we need to stand up to this idea, because Aave does have a super strong brand, and people actually believe that it is the safest, even though it actually isn't. It is very safe, but it's not the safest. And there are protocols, including Wise Lending, that are safer in several different areas. So if you're safer, or at least as safe as Aave, and you've got better yield, especially when it's 2-3 times better yield, that's when things become significant. So this is what we need to share with people. Because, earning 1.9% on your Ethereum, that is not a big deal. And you might as well, it's almost better to just hold it in your wallet and not take any risk on smart contracts whatsoever. But if you're going to take smart contract risks, the little bit of risk that you are taking by using a protocol like Wise Lending or Aave, then at least you want to get the best yield that you possibly can out of it. And we're not talking about a teensy tiny difference in yield. We're talking about 2 to 3x. And that is because we have power farms and Aave doesn't. So Aave could have very easily, built yield into their protocol. We didn't build these yield sources. This is another protocol. This is Pendle Finance. And we just brought this to our protocol and integrated it into our protocol. So yeah, it took a lot of work, and but Aave's got a big team too. They could have very easily done this if they wanted to, but they decided not to. They decided that they are going to just keep with a low APY, because they think that by integrating the yield sources, they're going to introduce more risk, or they're going to introduce the perception of more risk. But this is just not true, because those yield sources themselves are just as safe, if not safer, than Aave's contracts themselves. So this is a very important point to understand, and I hope that was clear to you guys. So let's check in with the stream, see how we're doing. Blue Phone Booth says, Aave's VIPs will start using Wise Lending for their personal finances, but they won't tell anybody. I don't know, man. I think everybody should start using Wise Lending. No matter who you are. And guys, just and a quick update about how things are going. I'm still working on converting the money that we did raise into crypto so that we'll have some to put on Wise Lending. And by the way, notice how that we keep on going up every single week. So we're at 355,000 total value locked. Some of that's because the price of ETH went up, but also some people put more ETH and a little bit more stable coins on the protocol. Because remember, we were just under 100 ETH last week, and then last week we finally got a little bit over, but now we have 3 more ETH than that too. So there's thousands of dollars being put onto the protocol every week. It'll start slow and then it'll start to ramp up. This is actually great, a great show for when we haven't even really pulled the trigger on any marketing activities yet. We're still in fundraising mode. We're not really starting the marketing activities until we've raised a few more million at least, and that's why we only have 350K on the protocol right now, but without telling really anybody, just making a couple tweets on Twitter, and we have 350K just basically from our community. That's a really, really good sign. And so I would encourage you, if you aren't using Wise Lending now, go ahead and deposit some, see how it is. And I don't think you're going to be disappointed. All right. So there was a question in Discord about WiseR. And so I wanted to go over that real quick. WiseR is still alive and well. There's just isn't a demand for people to mint it yet because people don't see the value. Once we have a higher value on Wise Lending, then that's going to start earning revenue. 10% of that revenue goes back to WiseR. So WiseR is basically people who have put in ETH into a DAO contract, and they can burn the WiseR at any time to redeem that ETH, and the 10% of revenue that WiseR owns from Wise Lending gets scraped periodically, depending on how quickly we're earning. It could be every month or every week or every day, depending on how fast we're earning money. 10% of that goes into the WiseR DAO, and that's just, profit and interest for the WiseR holders. The only snag in that whole scenario, the system works great, the only snag in that scenario was the fact that we did have an exploit while we were battle testing our protocol. So we lost several hundred ETH. Once with the liquid NFTs product, when the Azuki floor price crashed over 50% in one day. And then a second one when we were battle testing Wise Lending before we did our big audits, and when we were doing a battle testing round after our first formal audit, but before our first 2 big competitive audits. So there's several hundred ETH that's missing from the DAO, and people have already redeemed and burned their WiseR down to the points where there's no more ETH left in that DAO contracts. So it just means that people have to wait, because as we ramp up on Wise Lending, there'll be more interest in wanting to hold WiseR, which is a VIP asset. It actually earns 10% of the revenue from the protocol. So that's going to be really important and a really desired asset as our protocol grows. So we just have to wait until that happens. And also, if we raise enough funds, if we raise the full 10 million, then we'll just directly use some of those funds to mint WiseR ourselves to restock the ETH that is in that contract. But for right now, WiseR holders, just know that you own 10% of the revenue of the protocol. Right now, that revenue isn't a lot, because 350K, that's only going to make about $3,500 per year. So that would be $350 to WiseR per year. So obviously, you see, we need to grow. We need to have more than 350K. We need to have tens of millions, hundreds of millions, eventually billions within the next year or two. And then we'll be on a great trajectory to be able to not only make a name for ourselves as one of the big DeFi pillars in the space, like Uniswap, like MakerDAO, like Aave, but this will create that revenue that we need to bring a demand. So we're in a good position now, guys, because right now the market cap for Wise and Wise R is very small, and our protocol is pure because we own 100% of the revenue. So unlike Aave, unlike MakerDAO, which have already sold off a lot of equity, and they got founders that need to be paid, and teams that need to be paid, and $1 million per year in expenses or more. That's just not the case with Wise. Wise is a very lean team. It's a very well put together protocol, and there's not a high operating cost, and also we haven't sold any equity, and I'm paying the developers out of my own pocket. And if we did pay it with the protocol, it wouldn't cost that much. Like we're running on pretty much a skeleton crew as far as the product goes. We spent 3 years developing really, really, really hard. Now we've got a working product, and it's just a skeleton crew right now. So that means we can use up to 100% of our revenue to drive value to our tokens, and to the ecosystem of holders and users. We've also raised $1.2 million so far to basically give Wise Lending a proper launch, and soon, maybe even before the end of our raise, we'll start those marketing activities. So that's about it for today, guys. Thank you so much for coming out. So let me just check in one last time for more questions. I'm going to probably start doing these streams Tuesdays and Thursdays, because we don't have enough content so far to have a super interesting stream and there haven't been a lot of questions every single time. And also, I'm about to travel to Asia, not for Token 2049, but for some other events as well. And so I'm gonna be on the road soon, and on plane rides here in the next couple of weeks too. So we might pare back the streams a little bit, but at the very least we can at least still have the spaces, Twitter Spaces, once per week. And I'm also going to queue up some videos for you guys as well. So not lives, but definitely videos, just to keep the content going and to keep people engaged. So hope you enjoyed that stream. And if you have any questions or ideas or stuff that you want to talk about, leave a comment or come on Discord and leave a comment, and we'll make that the subject to talk about for some of these next streams. So thank you guys for coming.